Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about the Infant Toddler Quality Improvement Grant, which is a pilot grant being offered through the Great Start to Quality program via the Great Start to Quality platform and website. My name is Laura Fuller, and I am a Senior Project Manager for ECIC. This grant is my current project, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of the highlights of it with you today. So the purpose of this grant is really threefold. First, the purpose is to increase equitable access to high-quality infant and toddler childcare in the state of Michigan. Part of what we're trying to do with this grant is to increase pay equity for those that work with infants and toddlers. You may have seen there was recently released a wage study of early childhood educators showing that as a group, ECE educators are underpaid, which we all know, especially compared to other types of employment that have similar requirements. And so part of the purpose of this grant is to bring pay equity to ECE professionals. And last, to improve the quality of programs for infants and toddlers, specifically using an equity lens. So that's what we're up to in this pilot project. I should also say the purpose of this pilot project is to see if there is a better way of doing subsidy funding in the state of Michigan, particularly for infants and toddlers. We're looking at ways to increase wages. We're looking at ways to increase the number of slots available for infants and toddlers in childcare programs, and to make sure that we're addressing the needs of both providers and families in Michigan. So let's talk a little bit about the grant. Important to note are the dates, right? We always have to know the important dates. So the application opened on November 6th at 9 a.m. and it will remain open 24/7 on the website until the 17th, which is a Friday, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. After that, you'll see there's a fairly short turnaround, closing on the 17th. We will internally be making final funding decisions on the 20th and letting providers know what the outcome of their application is the week of November 27th, so after Thanksgiving. Additionally, the first payment will go out on December 5th for those that are approved. And starting in January of next year, there will be a monthly report due on the 10th. We'll have a whole separate segment on reporting, don't worry. And payments will go out on or before the 5th of each month. The pilot ends September 30th of 2024, at which point all funds must be spent, and your final report for providers that are approved, your final report will be due October 10th of 2024. There's another important date in there that I want to just bring your attention to. That is for those who are approved, on the 27th of November, you will get an email from our AP accounts payable department, which is through bill.com, and it will ask you to verify your banking information. It will probably look like spam, and it will be coming at a time of year, right around Black Friday, when there is a lot of spam. That said, this particular email is not spam. So if you receive an award letter that says you are approved on the 27th, you should also be checking your spam folder for a message from bill.com, which will allow you to verify your banking information and your W-9 information. So do keep an eye out for that email from bill.com. That said, the payment schedule, it's actually pretty simple. The 5th of the month, starting in December and ending in September of 2024. You'll note that the dates kind of overlap strangely. So the December payment will go out on the 5th. The January payment will go out on January 5th, but your December report will be due on January 10th. So you will be getting a second payment before your first report is due. That said, you will need to submit a monthly report, which again, we'll talk about more in a moment. So the application is open now. It will remain open until the 17th. And I do want to point out, applications are license specific. That means two things. First, if you have more than one license that was invited to apply, then you will need to complete applications for both or more licenses. Additionally, you will need to make sure that the funds that you were awarded for are spent at the license they are awarded to. So if you are awarded funding at 2 licenses, you need to make sure that the funds are spent at the appropriate location. We had an interest form up in October, so programs that submitted an interest form and met the minimum eligibility based on the interest form to apply were emailed an invitation over this last weekend. I want to point out that not all applications will be awarded a grant. I know that many of you probably participated in the stabilization grants, and in the stabilization grants, all eligible childcare providers were awarded a grant. This is not the case for this pilot project. For this pilot project, we have a limit of 2,000 slots that we can fund, and we will not be awarding all applications an award. Not all applications will receive money. We will be selecting applications that meet the requirements of our funder, that meet the requirements that have been set in place to support the goals, which is to address childcare areas that have not enough infant toddler subsidy available slots. We will be looking at your ability to expand slots. We will be looking at where you're located. We will be looking at quality levels and your GSQ quality level. So there are a lot of things that will go into determining which programs get funded, but please note that even if you meet the minimum eligible requirements, meaning that you have at least one full-time infant or toddler in your care and you bill for a CDC subsidy, that does not guarantee that you're going to receive a grant award. We have a funding formula for those that get funded. It will be based on a number of factors. So first, it will be based on your full-time infant and toddler enrollment. That's why it's really important to, when you're filling out the application, make sure that your enrollment numbers are accurate, especially your full-time infants and your full-time toddlers in the application. There is another clip that will go through the application. There are 2 funding levels. It's based on your current GSQ quality level. It's not based on license type. So with the stabilization grants, the base award was based on license type. That is not the case for this. The funding amount for this grant is based on your full-time infant enrollment and your quality level. That's what determines your base award. There will be additional funding for infants and toddlers in your care who are on an IFSP. Please note, though, that if you select on your application that you are caring for infants and toddlers with an IFSP, you will be required to upload that IFSP to the documentation tab no later than January 10th. If you're caring for more than one, the amount on the grant award will be dependent upon the number of infants and toddlers on an IFSP. So again, please make sure that information is accurate. But also, again, you will need to upload an IFSP for each child that you claim. If you're able to add additional slots, there will be additional funding as part of the grant calculation. Again, these slots have to be filled by infants and toddlers who are receiving a CDC subsidy. And again, you will have to document that new enrollment with the subsidy enrollment paperwork by January 10th. So there is a quick turnaround. It does have to be a new enrollment of an infant or toddler receiving subsidy. And so, we will be verifying that. Let's say in this case that you say that, with this funding, you can add 2 slots. You will get the payment for the 2 slots in December and in January. But if you don't by January 10th upload your new enrollment paperwork for the CDC subsidy, we will stop paying for that part of the grant award until you show that you have in fact enrolled CDC subsidy eligible infants and toddlers. I want to also emphasize that it's not they're in process, it's that you have the paperwork that they have been approved and are now receiving CDC subsidy. And then finally, there will be an additional funding given for those who participate in GSRP, and that will be documented via MDE, so you won't have to worry about documenting that. We will receive that information directly from the state. The main purpose of this grant really was wage equity. That's what was the driving force for this grant application. And so we really are hoping that it works to bridge the need for pay equity for early childhood educators. To that end, Our primary goal is for you to use these funds to bring ECE educators up to parity with pre-K teachers. What does that mean? Especially given that this is temporary pilot funding, what that means is probably a bonus. If your pre-K teachers make $20 an hour and your infant teachers make $15, and you want to give them a bonus of whatever works out to being $5 an hour, that difference for however many hours a week they work, right? That would be our preferred and the primary use that we would like to see of this funding. But again, we do recognize this is temporary, and therefore, instead of making it a wage increase, we are encouraging providers to consider it for bonus payments, whether that's hiring bonuses or retention bonuses. Eligible staff, there are a couple of things to note here that are very, very important. Staff for this grant that you pay, that you increase their wages or you give them a bonus, or you pay for their professional development, and any eligible staff that you fund out of this grant must be caring for infants and toddlers, so birth to 35-month classrooms, that receive child development and care subsidy through MDE. So there must be at least one infant or toddler in their classroom in order for you to use this money to support and supplement their wages. 2, they must be legal employees. What does that mean? That means that you have to give them a W-2 at the end of the tax year, and you have to withhold their payroll taxes. This money cannot be used to fund staff that you give a 1099 to. This is not for contract staff. This is only for legal employees. That said, staff that you hire through an agency such as EduStaff that does hire them as legal employees, does give them a W-2, does withhold taxes, they do get benefits, all of those things. You can use this fund, you can use this money to pay the invoice from the agency for staff that you have hired through a staffing agency. So you can't use it to hire contractors because labor law dictates that contractors, you can't tell them their hours. You have to, contractors technically are supposed to be a task-based job category, whereas childcare is not. You're not just telling them that they have to, complete the report, but instead you're saying you have to be here to take care of these children from 6 to 6 or from 6 to 2 or whatever their hours are. But anytime you start setting hours, technically you should have, they should be your legal employee. They should not be a 1099 staff. And therefore, because of labor law, this money cannot be used to support 1099 staff. Again, though, it can be used to pay invoices for a staffing agency that hires staff as legal employees. Guidance for spending, those top 2 are in blue because, again, that's where we really want you to spend the money. Bringing, as hiring bonuses for new staff, as wage increases or bonuses for staff retention. One of the things that we talked about is being a really awesome way to spend this. If you have a staff member who's using a Teach Scholarship and you want to pay them for the time that they're spending studying for their credentialing, for their ECE coursework, or for their CDA, by all means, if you want to use this to pay for what it costs as a tuition reimbursement for ECE staff, or for ECE coursework, or for their CDA applications, things like that, great. I also want to point out business management supports and materials. One of the things that falls under that category is a tax preparer. Would highly, highly, highly recommend, especially coming out of the stabilization grants. We saw a lot of business owners who weren't quite prepared for the change in their tax status by receiving these kinds of funds. So you will receive a 1099 both for 2023 and for 2024 if you're awarded a grant. And it will be a business income source. And so it is taxable money. And so hiring a tax preparer to help you make sure that you're claiming your maximum number of business expenses and such to decrease your tax burden, a highly recommended way to use some of these funds. If you need to purchase infant toddler classroom furnishings, particularly to increase your capacity for for caring for infants and toddlers receiving subsidy, also an accepted use, and materials for children who are on an IFSP. If there are special things that they need to support their learning and development, then also acceptable use of these funds. Let's move into talking a little bit about reporting. First, I want to point out that there will be a separate training, a separate set of clips about reporting. These are just some of the highlights to kind of get your head in the game of what you'll need to keep and to do if you're a recipient of this pilot award. First, there is a monthly report. It will be in GSQ, just like the stabilization grant reports, but this one will be due on the 10th of the following month. So again, if you get your December payment on the 5th of December, your December report will be due on January 10th. Your January report, February 10th, and so on until we get to the end of the grant cycle, which will be the September 5th grant payment, followed by an October 10th grant report. I do want to point out, not submitting your report by the 10th will delay the payment, your next grant payment. So if you, let's say, instead of submitting your grant report on the 10th, you submit it on the 15th, that February payment will probably not come until March. So it's really important, set yourself a reminder, get it done before the end of the, before the deadline, because we absolutely will need those reports submitted on time. Each month, you're going to be asked if you added additional subsidy slots, if you filled those, including the documentation. So if you say on the grant application that you are going to add 2 slots, then we'll need to see the 2 new subsidy enrollments by January 10. You'll also be asked every month how you spent the funds. And remember, again, if the report's not done, you won't be paid the next month's payment until it is, and until the next AP run. So it's really, really critical that you get your reports in on time. So the short form report is the every month. How did you spend the money? I do want to point out, in fact, I should go back to do so, that while we ask you how you spent the funds, you do not have to spend the funds in the month they were received. So let's say you get your December payment on December 5th because you verified your information, and you get the direct deposit hits your bank account on the 5th. But it's holiday season. Maybe you are closed for the holidays, and so you don't have staff between Christmas and New Year's, and so there's like a week's worth of payroll that is sitting there. You don't have to spend it in December. You'll just report on it the month that you spent it. So while at the end of 10 months, you will need to have reports for the full grant amount, it won't be like this month it has to be this month and this much, and this month it has to be this much, and this month it has to be this much. It can be, it can be spent across. Maybe you have more infants and toddlers during the school year than in the summer, and so your costs are higher there, right? You can report those expenses then. So just report it for the months that you spent it, but it doesn't have to be reported for the month that you received it, with the caveat being that all money has to be spent by that September 30th, 2024 date. So your September money definitely does have to be spent that month. All right, additional reporting. So 3 times in March, in June, and in October, we will have some additional questions for you on your monthly report. We chose those months very specifically. So one of the things we're trying to show with this pilot program is an immediate impact in wages. And so we want to see, okay, by March, you've had your December, your January, your February, and your March payment. So in the March report, we want to see how has that impacted your staffing. What are your now? If when you submitted the application, you said that your average lead infant teacher made $15 an hour, and you've gotten 4 months now of payment on the grant. How have you bumped up their wages? How are you spending this money? And so how is it impacting staff wages? How is it impacting your recruitment? Do you have more staff? Have you filled openings that you reported on the application? Things like that. We'll also ask on these time period reports, the March, June, and October, we will ask if any of your staff have earned new credentials. And finally, we'll ask you if you have any impact stories to complete and add to the report. So 3 times. Why did we pick those months? So again, March, because you've had 4 payments now, so we want to see what are the immediate impacts of this additional funding. June, because it's the end of the school year, so we want to see like, okay, well, how does that change? Do you have more enrollment, less enrollment? If you have other funding that comes in over the summer, if you've lost your, if there's no more GSRP funding over the summer. So all of those kinds of impacts, we want to see how that's going to impact for summer. And then for October, obviously that's the end of the grant period. That'll be your last grant report. So we'll be wanting to collect all of that final data. Additional requirements as part of our provider support, ECIC staff are working to expand the referral process. One of the things we heard loud and clear in the interest form, and which frankly we already knew, was that some of the breakdown in getting subsidy eligible infants and toddlers into care is a lack of referrals, not knowing where to find them, whether that's on the family side or whether that is on the provider side. And so one of the very first things that we're going to be doing is working to beef up the referral process. So one of the ways we'll do that is with text messages. So one of the things that we're asking for you is that you keep that you respond to text messages as you receive them from us. One of the things that we're going to be doing with this process is updating enrollment data with text messages. So instead of having to log into the site and fill out all of the boxes in the thing, we'll say, we'll send you a text message and it'll say something like, how many infant openings do you have right now? And you'll let us know right by responding to the text message, and it will automatically update your profile information so we can keep referrals moving. Additionally, as always, we ask that you make a point of checking the GSQ website for resources and updates. We will be putting them there. We'll also be putting them out with our social media accounts. So I know a lot of you use Facebook, so keep an eye on the Facebook page.